the church, Lifesaver or life preserver? That's my question. I just want to recite the particular verses I'm leaning on for our message today, verses 17 through 20 of Paul's first letter to the Corinthians. I seldom preach from Paul's first letter to the Corinthians, especially chapter 7. This is one time I'm going to tell you, don't go home and read the whole chapter. It's très compliqué. It's problematic. But hidden within it is this nugget. I think this jewel. And that's what I'm going to share with you today. Let each of you lead the life that the Lord has assigned, to which God called you. This is my rule in all the churches. Was anyone at the time of his call already circumcised? Let him not seek to remove the marks of circumcision. Ouch! Was anyone at the time of his call uncircumcised? Let him not seek circumcision. Thank you. Circumcision is nothing, and uncircumcision is nothing, but obeying the commandments of God is everything. Let each of you remain in the condition in which you were called. Because of you, Pilgrim changes lives. I love that theme. Love that theme. It just gets right to the point of it. It gets right to the point of why we gather. And I love the video that you all put together. That was amazing. And so now you're going to have to do that every year. The church is a place of transformation. It's a place of growth and change. I would put it even stronger. Pilgrim doesn't just change lives. Pilgrim saves lives. We are witness. We are witness to lives saved right here in our worship. When we hear the life-saving stories during our joys and concerns. We hear the healing stories, the immense gratitude, and the way that being the church, that we are actually saving lives. Yes, we are the last stop on the Christian train. All aboard! We are the last hope for many who have given up on church. But the most dramatic rescues happen outside of the view of most of us. And that's why I'm glad you did that video, to bring that life-changing, life-saving testimony into our vision. See, our ministry of space, where we provide the opportunity for groups that are bringing hope and healing to our community to meet on our premises. We are host to 12 different 12-step groups that save lives every day of the week. We are not one of those churches that's only open for 1 hour on Sunday. There's a different group meeting every day of the week. Now, yes, these programs do the work, but our providing a place for them to happen is essential. You see, we're like an ambulance. We get the Lifesaver to a place where they can do their work. We deliver them. But there is a testimony that is missing, that we can add to next year's video, and we'll work on it together. I know you might not be aware. The most powerful testimonies of life-saving, life-changing impact of Pilgrim Church, I hear them year in and year out, are the testimonies of our newest members. And all of you were new members at some point. And sometimes you get away from it and you forget what it meant that first day, that first week that you walked through the doors of Pilgrim Church. And when we sit around, I ask those potential new members in our pastor's reception, how did you find Pilgrim Church and what does it mean to you? And to a person, they often say, I can't believe a church like this exists. I don't believe a church like this exists. I've been looking for a church like this all my life. Or they'll say, as a grown person, this is the first church I've ever joined. Because, we're now in that generation where our parents, they didn't make us go to church. Our parents were the hippie generations. Like, I'll let them make their own decisions. And so we have a lot of adults who are, quote unquote, unchurched, never knew the stories, never went to Sunday school. And they are finding us and saying, that's not what I saw on TV. That's not what I read in the newspaper. What kind of church? Are you really a church? Yes, we are really a church. And so I really want to lift up that dimension. But there's still another dimension of our work as a church. Yes, life-saving is exciting and dramatic. But there's also what I'd call the life-preserving aspect of the church. Sometimes you don't need to change your life. You don't need to be saved, as our evangelical siblings like to put it. One old preacher tale, it says, in every sermon, you've got to lose them before you save them. You got to threaten them with the flames of hell and then rescue them. But some of us never got close to the fire. We were always walking the straight and narrow, or we were just living our lives. And so, one of the things that this church does, that Paul, of all people, did in the church at Corinth, is simply to throw people a life preserver. I'm fine just the way I am. Let each of you lead the life that the Lord has assigned you, to which God called you. This is my rule in all the churches. That's kind of what we do best. Just let people be. Just let people be. Now let me pause for a moment to clarify the term call. What does it mean to be called by God? See, we most notably understand this term in the context of ministry. Every candidate for ministry has to write a paper that explains and defines and defends their call to ministry. But as Protestants, one of our core teachings is that we are all ministers. You see, the word minister is a translation of the Greek word servant. We serve God by living the life that we found compelling in the life and teachings of Jesus of Nazareth. So, whatever it was that drew you to this community that we call Pilgrim, whatever drew you to this way of life to join a community that we call the people of the way. See, that was the first name of those Christian folks that followed Jesus. They were called the people of the way before they were called Christians. So whatever it is that drew you to this way of life and thinking and outlook, that is your call. You were called to care. You were called to love. You were called to help. You were called to have faith that another world is possible. That's your calling. Paul is saying that whoever you were, wherever you were, whatever you were, when you were able to hear the call of God, stay that way. If it was good enough for God, it's good enough for me. Yes, yes. Now, sometimes we cannot hear the call until we do get saved from lives of self-destruction, lives that cause hurt and pain to others. But that involves more what we do than who we are. Because indeed, we are more than our worst act. Amen? We can change what we do. Who we are? Not so much. Too much of Christianity is focused on saving people from who they are because some people decided that God only calls certain kind of people. God only calls certain kind of people straight out of central casting or something. You know, I mean, what does a Christian look like? Well, James, you do fit the stereotype at some point. So I'm glad you're here. Glad you're here. But Paul, the greatest Christian theologian of all time, says this: let each of you remain in the condition in which you were called. Now, the hottest debate in the early church was around whether a person answering the call to follow Jesus first had to become Jewish. And for a male to become Jewish, to convert to Judaism, they had to undergo circumcision. And that was a huge barrier to the evangelical plans of Paul and Peter and the early church. Now, women didn't have to endure that process, so maybe that's why the church was predominantly women and women leaders as well. Now, that's another sermon. But that was the big issue. Circumcision was the gateway, the process, but the meaning was, do you have to become Jewish in order to become a Christian? Because Jesus was a Jew, and the first Christians were all Jews. Let's not forget that. Anyway, that was the big barrier, and Paul finally declares as a rule in all his churches, circumcision is nothing. Whoa! That was a huge statement to make. And you'll see why he caused such controversy. Circumcision is nothing, and uncircumcision is nothing, but obeying the commandments of God is everything. So, to follow Paul's logic, whoever you are, you're fine. You don't need to change a thing. You don't need a lifesaver, but maybe you can have a life preserver. Who you are on the outside and how the world perceives you means nothing to God. But do you love your neighbor as yourself? That's everything. So, if I'm reading my Paul right, then I think I can say in the name of Paul, based on what he said to the 1 Corinthians church, and this was his rule in all of his churches, I think I can say, were you gay when God called you? Stay gay. Amen. Were you a lesbian when God called you? Stay a lesbian. Were you bisexual when God called you? Stay bisexual. Were you black when God called you? Stay black. Were you a woman when God called you? Stay a woman. You don't have to become somebody else to serve God and to answer God's call. So were you straight when God called you? Stay straight and fly right. This is what Paul says. Just be who you are. If you could hear the call of God, then God must have deemed you worthy of that call. And no one else can tell you that you did not hear God calling you, especially by looking at you from the outside, because God looks at us from the inside. That's what Paul says. Circumcision and every other external facing marks of living and life don't matter to God. But love is everything. Let the people of God say, amen.